Walter Rodney COI hearings continue. Project launched to improve hinterland education and help Ministry to roll out Mental Health Action Plan. This is Weekly Digest, a production of the Government Information Agency that keeps you up to date on what the government has been doing. With the details, I'm your host, Vanita Meshwar. With the improvement of airlift in Guyana over the past year, the country has been witnessing a significant increase in visitor arrivals. Guyana is now poised to surpass last year's 200,000 mark.
Arrivals, we've seen currently a 2% year-to-date increase in arrivals over last year. If you would recall, 2013 was a record year for Guyana when for the first time we reached the 200,000 mark. Just May recorded a 9.6% increase over the previous record year for May, and April, just gone, also recorded a 28.8% increase in arrivals. Now, June last year was 14,601. Already, with the bookings and the numbers that are coming, we will exceed that number also for last year. July last year recorded 23,527 visitors. We are set now with all these airlines and doubling of the seats and peak season to surpass this, or to blast past this, if we can say.
The government, through the Tourism Ministry, has been working non-stop to bring on board more airlines to improve competitiveness and to offer more choices to customers. Increased arrivals will also lead to higher occupancy rate, as well as a number of other spin-off benefits for the sector and the country as a whole.
Last year, when TravelSpan started, along with Fly Jamaica, and with the addition of Incel Air, Conviesa, Copa coming on July 11th, Dynamic starting today, that airlift or seat capacity to Guyana has literally doubled. So the seat capacity has literally doubled. Now imagine that in a matter of 7-8 months for a little known destination such as Guyana. Now this means business. This is serious investment for each airplane flying here. It's millions of US dollars in terms of investment. And that's an endorsement on Guyana's economy and on the tourism sector.
Meanwhile, the expansion of the aviation sector intensifies the need for the continuation of the expansion of the major port of entry, the Cheddi Jagan International Airport, which will be the hub for air transportation. The Walter Rodney Commission of Inquiry began its third session of hearings on June 23, which saw still more startling revelations surfacing surrounding the time during which the death of the historian occurred.
The third session of the Walter Rodney Commission of Inquiry saw the completion of the evidence of Robert Allen Gates and the introduction of two new witnesses. Executive member of the Working People's Alliance, WPA, Takuma Ogunse, denied that the WPA was collecting arms and ammunition for the overthrow of the government of the day, but for the purpose of the defense of its members.
The Security Committee comprised Dr. Rupert Ruthenrein, Dr. Walter Rodney, and myself. And our mandate was to work to develop defenses of the party.
Meanwhile, former Guyana Defense Force pilot Gerald Jerry Gavaya admitted to flying an army plane to Kwakwani on June 14, 1980, the day after Dr. Walter Rodney was killed. Gavaya stated that his passengers were a man, a woman, and some children. He stated that he did not know at the time that the man was William Gregory Smith.
The state would have assisted Gregory Smith in moving from Mary, Georgetown, to Kwakwani, as far as you know, on the 14th of June, 1980.
You want a yes or no answer? The answer is no. But I could explain it to you.
Tell me.
I could say that the Army Air Corps, somewhere in that command structure, would have done that.
He said he had received the orders to transport those persons from the operations staff. Dr. Walter Rodney, a Guyanese political activist and intellectual, died on June 13, 1980, when a bomb exploded in his car.
The Ministry of Education has commenced consultations in Region 9, which will inform a 5-year action plan for its hinterland education improvement project. The project was officially launched at St. Ignatius Region 9, where more than 300 parents, teachers, and students from communities such as Kumu, Kaikombe, Arapaima, Mokomoko, Quarry, Yupukari, Fly Hill, Katoka, Hiowa, St. Ignatius, Kwatata, Napi, and Parashara turned out.
While much successes have been recorded from the investments made in the sector, we are not happy with the quality of education that is being delivered and the results that are coming out of that quality in the hinterland regions. I believe we can do better. I know we can do better. I know our children are worthy of more. I know if we put more effort into what we do in these regions, these children will produce more. I'm absolutely sure of it.
The ministry recognizes that more emphasis needs to be placed on the quality of education delivered to the hinterland as a whole, with specific attention being paid to learning outcomes. As such, the HEIP program was formulated to determine the gaps that exist in providing quality education and good learning outcomes.
You don't want to sit at a desk in Brigham and Georgetown and decide what is best for you and believe arrogantly that we know what will meet your needs. We could do that. It would be easier to do that, a lot easier for us to do that rather than come and spend days in Region 9 trying to find out from you what is better. But I think if we did that, we would be doing two things. One, we would be losing benefit of your knowledge here on the ground that you can tell us about. And secondly, we would kind of be breaching our constitution, which says that when we're making decisions, we must talk to people to hear what would be best for them. So this is a consultation because we want to hear from you what you think would best serve you, and we're making copious notes.
This project consists of 5 components: improving quality teacher education in the hinterland, aligning teacher learning resources to improve students' outcomes, improving physical facilities, fostering community alliances, strengthening management and supervision in the hinterland. To further enhance efforts to curb the issue of solid waste management, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment recently hosted a national conversation on the issue.
The event, which was held at the Sophia Exhibition Center, was aimed at sharing ideas among the public, along with discussions among the attendees and the ministers, namely Minister of Natural Resources and the Environment, Robert Persaud, Minister of Local Government and Regional Development, Norman Whitaker, and Minister of Health, Dr. Berry Ramsaran. The event emphasized on the areas of policy and programs, authority, and implementation of the existing policies and networking. The opportunity was also used for individuals to pool their ideas together to develop an action plan to change the current status of this issue in Guyana.
A conversation should be frank, but also should be constructive and forward-looking. And so when we've decided, having spoken to a number of stakeholders, including our partners, because we believe that the issue of solid waste management and the whole issue of creating a clean Guyana has to be done through collaboration. Public, private, community, NGOs, but also it requires a higher level of interagency collaboration, especially at the institutions, the state institutions, the elected institutions too, that are there on a day-to-day basis with different responsibilities. But if we do not have that greater interaction or collaboration at that level, it will, in a way, do an injustice to the whole national momentum of creating a clean Guyana.
Better disposal practices were also urged by the health minister, as he pointed out that improper disposal can have a negative impact not only on the environment but also human health.
We are confronted with what is looked at as a health issue, but it's really an environmental issue. The mosquitoes breeding in places where we should have them breeding because we have degraded our environment. We're not caring for it. You go to certain other villages. I went to Best Village recently. They have their parapets cleaned. I saw no styrofoam box on the parapet and so on. They were complaining about issues. Absent landlords, for example, not caring for the environment. Therefore, you have a lot of bush and you have a lot of mosquitoes from those things. So we still have that tradition, Minister Whitaker, where people care for the environment. So I'm happy. I want to leave this conversation, even if I have to go a bit early for the engagement that I hear this coming out of it. What do you want to give up? What about giving up a portion of your personal carbon footprint? For example, demanding that the food and the stuff that we buy are not packaged in environmentally unfriendly packaging.
The Ministry of Local Government has assured the public that the $1 billion which was allocated for a countrywide cleanup campaign will be used to aid in this solution to the problem, as much effort has already been made in this regard.
There's more to come, please stay tuned.
Government's efforts to continue the improvement of medical services have been negatively affected by the decision of the parliamentary opposition to cut funding for the specialty hospital and the medical sector. This move means that monies for the provision of medical gear for doctors and nurses, along with new equipment for hospitals and clinics such as those at Port Kaituma, Linden, Kokwani and Bartica, and new ambulances have not been approved. This move by the political opposition will adversely affect the provision and delivery of health care in communities across Guyana. The opposition's disapproval of monies for the Office of the President has affected several agencies such as the Civil Defense Commission. This agency deals with managing and assisting persons and communities affected by disasters, natural and man-made. The move to disapprove funding for the CDC means that if any disaster were to occur, the government would not be able to provide any assistance to those in need.
By cutting the administrative arm of the Office of the President's funding, the allocation for the provision of the Head of State Security has been removed. This action can compromise the security of President Donald Ramotar. This move sets a dangerous precedent and is unacceptable for any head of state, government, or right-thinking people of a democratic nation. The disapproval of funds by the political opposition for the Ministry of Finance's administrative arm means that students wishing to attend the University of Guyana will not be able to access any loans for 2014. The move will prevent many students who are unable to pay cash from studying and having a tertiary education. Most of these students are underprivileged and are unable to afford higher education to further their development and increase job opportunities.
Evidence of government's commitment to the sugar industry, Budget 2014 makes a provision of $6 billion to Gaisuku to help the industry reverse its fortunes. The provision will redound to the benefit of the 18,000 workers and their families and to the other 120,000 persons directly or indirectly benefiting from the industry.
The Ministry of Health will soon be launching a national mental health action plan to deal with the numerous aspects of the illness.
The plan will focus on the integration of mental health into the primary healthcare services and would include training for family doctors and nurses and medics in mental health management, along with improving psychiatric services at the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation.
We hope by the 10th of October, which is World Mental Health Day, to be able to launch our draft here. Will become a strategy, will become in some form which is more integrated. Elements of the plan include integrating mental health into the primary health care, right? So that mental health will not be something up there where you have to make a great effort to access it. It must be at the community level. At the level of the health center, the workers must be trained to recognize persons who have emerging mental health issues. It's said, international data says that up to 15% of the world population at any time has some form or the other of a mental illness.
It will also focus on dealing with several contributing factors to the illness. These include the development of a national suicide prevention strategy, a homeless action plan, and a drug rehabilitation program. A draft for the mental health promotion and prevention plan will also be developed.
Suicide, for example, is everybody's business. You might have a woman being killed by her angered spouse and then he commits suicide. The Ministry of Health will find it difficult to interact with these people until they meet the hospital or the mortuary. It has to be a bigger intervention. The religious communities, the civic communities, and so on and so forth. Identifying mental health issues at an early stage.
Legislation is also one of the issues that will be looked at under this plan. This will see the Guyana Mental Health Policy and Plan 2014 to 2020 being updated, the preparation of a policy and guidelines to use psychotropic substances, and the finalization of Guyana's legislation in this regard. Under this plan, human resource training will be given priority. Emphasis will be placed on incorporating mental health into the curriculum for professional nurses and nursing assistant programs, and the provision of the Masters in Medicine in the Neuropsychiatry program. Thus far, 250 individuals from different areas of the medical field have already been trained in this area.
The Natural Resources Ministry presented transportation and communication equipment to the Guyana Police Force to assist in combating crime in the hinterland.
In an effort to beef up security in the hinterland regions, especially in the mining areas, Minister of Natural Resources and the Environment Robert Persaud handed over 2 all-terrain vehicles and satellite phones to Commissioner of Police Acting Silal Persaud on June 25.
The integrative approach, as the Commissioner of Police pointed out, is certainly a sensible one, and hence today we are making this donation of which we consider critical equipment that will improve logistics and communication. Because anytime we reach out and the miners themselves reach out, one of the constraints that would be identified is logistics, transportation, or communication. And we understand those are real. You know, we're a country that we're developing, and there's so much that can be spent in so many priority areas. And whilst the allocation to the security forces have been going up, particularly the police, we believe too that as stakeholders, it is our duty to support targeted efforts. And we want to ensure that our hinterland region, working with the police, working with the army, and other stakeholders, that we rid or we make them, as it were, as much as possible, a crime-reduced and ultimately a crime-free zone in this regard.
Mining is the largest contributor to Guyana's economic development, and over the years, miners have been complaining about the need for enhanced security in the mining areas. In this regard, the Ministry, in collaboration with the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission and the Guyana Gold and Diamond Miners Association, is working closely with the Guyana Police Force to ensure mining areas are much safer.
This represents one additional effort of the collaboration between the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, the Guyana Police Force, and other stakeholders within the interior region. The approach to security, crime and security in the interior has to be an integrated approach. Of recent, we have had joint operations. We have had training. We have had the police officers operating in the interior being trained by resource personnel from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, particularly in legislation relating to the Mining Act, Forestry Act, and the Environmental Act. That training will continue in 2 ways. One, continued by the ministry, but even within the police force, we have had trainers trained that will continue that training.
Guyana's vast interior lends itself to a number of opportunities and challenges, one of those being how to ensure the safety of operations, businesses, and individuals in the hinterland. More so, with the establishment of close to 18 new mining stations in different areas and the updating of the mining regulations, police presence is much more needed in order for those areas to be managed properly. Additionally, the ministry will continue to provide support in the area of training to ensure the force is aware of the mining laws.
Guyana has witnessed a complete turnaround in the area of technical and vocational education and training as enhancement of the TVET project approaches its completion.
As the enhancement of technical and vocational education and training TVET project approaches its completion in December, the Ministry of Education, in collaboration with the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, held an exit workshop on June 20 to evaluate the success of the project and its impact on Guyana. In 2008, the Board of Directors of the CDB approved a loan of US $7.5 million for the implementation of the enhancement of TVET project, which was intended to assist the government of Guyana in expanding access to and enhancing the delivery of TVET in the country.
This project must be regarded as a game changer for education system in Guyana, and particularly for TVET system, and for workforce development for the 21st century Guyana labor force. 10 years ago, by then I was maybe at the Government Technical Institute, the status of technical education in Guyana was deemed quite discouraging, given several reports that was done during that period, some of which highlighted the fact that a high percentage of our instructors do not have the pedagogical or technical skills, or sometimes both. Tools and equipment in our TVET institutions were either outdated, unserviceable, or unavailable. The status of our inventory was that bad that decisions were taken not to highlight every item that we have found in our TVET institutions as inventory. Then there was no program that would have offered teachers in TVET institutions.
This workshop was intended to evaluate how much the project has assisted in achieving the objectives that were set, evaluate the objectives and whether they would have contributed to the expected outcomes, and to identify the strategies and methodologies which were successful in order for them to be applied to other interventions in the future.
Today, we are witnessing what I might call a 360-degree turnaround. And this is because of the vision of the Ministry of Education and by extension the government of Guyana, having recognized and embraced the potential TVET offers to a developing economies like ours. The new trust and commitment will definitely place us squarely in line with contemporary practices in the region and further afield, and concomitantly accelerate our national development. It has, however, been a long, assiduous road. We are moving away from a place where TVET was largely regarded as an area for low-skilled, low-wage pursuits. We are also moving from the backward mindset that TVET pursuits are for the less able among us.
With the construction of the Essequibo, Lenora, New Amsterdam, Mahaica, Linden, and Georgetown Technical Institutes, Guyana is moving away from a place where TVET was largely regarded as a low-wage pursuit and the mindset that it is for the less able. The TVET institutions are committed to offering education and training to youths and adults in technical, commercial, and scientific fields relevant to the needs of the national economy. In addition, the TVET institutions have a responsibility to collaborate with industry and commerce in the planning of programs which will facilitate the acquisition of appropriate knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values necessary for the development of self and the nation.
There's more to come, please stay tuned.
The 2014 national budget has allocated $32.3 billion for education as government continues to emphasize the sector, which has undergone significant transformation in response to the emerging needs of society. A message from the Government Information Agency.
Parents with school-aged children will achieve a measure of relief with the provision of $10,000 per school year for all school children in the public schools. This from the 2014 budget is in addition to the school uniform voucher, which will continue to be distributed. The provision of $1 billion via the national budget for the execution of cleaning and sanitation works in the nation's municipalities is an indication of government's commitment towards providing a healthy environment and keeping its citizens safe from various diseases spread by insanitary conditions. Half of this amount will be used to clean the capital city of Georgetown and begin the process of restoring it to its former status of the Garden City.
President Donald Ramotar and cabinet members discussed matters of public concern on June 24. The media was briefed subsequently on these deliberations.
Presidential Advisor on Governance Gail Teixeira was on June 26 given the opportunity to sensitize the Financial Action Task Force plenary of the unique situation that has presented itself to Guyana in seeking to pass the Anti-Money Laundering, Countering the Financing of Terrorism bill.
To put it in a nutshell, as I assume that she had to, literally, with the time allocated for her presentation, her thrust, the gist of her presentation was, unlike other situations affecting other jurisdictions brought before FATF, this one had nothing to do with government and intransigence of government.
The plenary was informed of the efforts of all stakeholders to ensure the timely passage and enactment of a CFATF compliant anti-money laundering legislation, being confronted by the inflexibility of the parliamentary opposition.
It was not a government that was being tried, so to speak, at the FATF plenary. It was a unique situation. What do governments do when the level of frustration has been so consistently maintained by an intransigent parliamentary opposition on the basis of a one-seat majority? I can't imagine Gales's presentation not concentrating on that fact.
The Anti-Money Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism bill came as a result of recommendations from the CFATF. The country was given several deadlines to pass its important legislation, all of which were missed. As a result, the country has been regionally blacklisted. Meanwhile, government has given approval for the implementation of 2 components of the United States Agency for International Development USAID-funded Leadership and Democracy LEAD project. The U.S. $1.5 million project, which for a short while was being implemented without support from Cabinet, was halted in May to facilitate discussions between the government and U.S. officials aimed at arriving at mutually accepted guidelines and components for its implementation.
June the 18th, 2014, the U.S. authorities were officially notified by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of cabinet decisions made on Tuesday, June the 10th, about the proposed Government of Guyana USAID project. The information provided to the U.S. authorities included Cabinet's approval of the design and activities of 2 components of the proposed Government of Guyana USAID project. 2 components. One of those components dealt with matters surrounding the strengthening of the National Assembly. The other dealt with civic education and support for local government elections.
The engagement between the government of Guyana and the U.S. authorities on the other components of the project continues.
And that's all we have for you in this week's program, but before we go, here's a recap of the highlights. Walter Rodney's COI hearings continue, project launched to improve hinterland education, and Health Ministry to roll out mental health action plan. Remember that Weekly Digest and other government information can be found on our website, www.gina.gov.gy, or you can send us your comments and suggestions at gina.gov.gy@gmail.com. Thank you for watching, and do join us again next